it's Christine again with the Artist Pod. Welcome back, and today we're going to be drawing a raccoon. Like always, when I'm drawing, I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet, and I'm drawing straight into Photoshop. So, let's get arting. Alright, here's the raccoon. So, you know, everyone knows raccoon looks like. They have the white and the black. Just going to get started with the white, and then we'll move on to the blackish, brownish color for everything else. The black around the eyes is a little darker than what's up here. I have a couple different grayish browns to choose from. And I'll probably mix in some white into some of this as well. But when you're layering out fur, you always put one dash between the others. Try to make it the length of the fur, so raccoon hair, you know, fur pretty short. And then following the contour, so being mindful of how the fur would be coming off and following that. Now I will also say that their hair is short by the face, but it does get longer as it comes out. So as the hair gets further away from the nose, right, I can increase my stroke length because that hair gets longer. Typically, even long-haired animals, their hair is the shortest by the nose and often will be relatively short. Now that is usually, I have seen it, not the case where certain animals, particularly like dogs, certain dog breeds will have long hair even by their nose, but for the most part, animals, even long-haired animals, the hair by the face, nose, cheeks will be relatively short. So we're going to have the light source coming from above and to the right. Like always, that means above and in front of, not behind or next to. Okay, and we're just going to get started. I'm probably going to have to take off, yeah, okay. It's just, the colors sometimes are close enough together, it can be hard to distinguish one from the other. So I'm just going to take that off. So as I'm doing this, it's full pin pressure. I'm just following the contour we've already created with the sketch of the fur direction. Full pin pressure, I should say, in the highlight. When we get to the shadowed side, you know, over here, it's going to be just backing off our pin pressure. And then, you know, like always, all edges are in shadow, even on the side of the light source. Now that would change depending on the angle of the light source. If the light source were right next to the raccoon, the side would be in highlight, but a lot of the rest of the face would potentially be in shadow. So the best way to put a subject in highlight is to have the light source coming from just in front of, which means all edges will be in shadow. So this edge, it won't be a big one, a little bit of a shadow before it goes right into highlight, whereas this side will be in shadow. And there's a little bit of an edge here that will do that just a little bit with as well. And then of course underneath will be in shadow. So as I'm doing it here, right, backing off my pin pressure, just sort of lightly filling it in. Gonna do this edge and then we'll connect it back, so you don't want a hard transition, you want it to be a gentle transition. So it's important that it's feathered in nice and evenly. And that typically happens by building up the highlight right next to the shadow, although sometimes even still I'll make it too harsh before we go all the way back into full pin pressure. Give some wiggle room to feather it in. Space under here, under this top lip, is tight enough it might be tricky to have shadow come across, or I should say highlight come across. So we'll see if I can add any little burst. Let's see if I can do just a hair. I think I'm gonna have to leave it at that though. And then again, make sure that's nice and feathered in. So some of this over here, it's going to be in highlight. Find it easier to do it in shadow to sort of sort that out. The nose isn't big enough to, doesn't jut out enough to block the light on the cheek here, so there would be some highlighting. I'm going to bring just that little flash of highlight. There's not a lot of space to work with. Bringing it all the way over. I'm going to lightly add some highlight over here. I'm not putting a ton of pin pressure because I'm going to want to feather all of this in. Some of this is going to be in highlight, but you know, like I always do, I find it easier to sometimes draw a section in shadow. Gives me more control over how and where the highlight kicks in because I can fade it in nice and easy, or fade it out, and prevent a jarring transition. I forgot to put this on a new layer, so we'll see if I have to make any adjustments to it. At least figured it out somewhat early. I'm just attempting to separate out this brown from the white to put them on different layers. And some of my reason for doing that is in case I decide this is a little too bright, once I add in the last color, I'll be able to darken all of it up together instead of, you know, sort of accidentally having that separated out. So it's looking a little bit bright for me right now, but that doesn't mean I won't keep it this color. But I might not. Now this darker color, I am going to be tapering off the pin pressure a bit, so I'm not putting full pin pressure right now. It is so much darker, but in the light it can still look kind of brownish. So instead of doing it as a pure black, I think adding some brown into it should work. We're going to get the nose, and then we'll finish out the ears, and then work on the eyes. I've kept the nose the same brown color as the rest of the face. Probably a bit blacker than that, but... So to start off, right, I'm putting very little pin pressure as I fill this in. And then I'll flush out some highlights very sort of gingerly. Since it's a dark color, and I design on black, I can't really use something that's too dark or it'll fade away. And so I do that by lessening my pin pressure on a lighter color. But that means there's a very, it's a delicate balance to make sure it looks black when it's not. And some of that happens because you have the comparison of other colors around it. So the white, for instance, should help it look darker than it really is, because I'm not putting full pin pressure. If I were, it would definitively not look black or dark. It would look like the lighter brown. Not only am I holding back my pin pressure, but I'm putting less strokes, so I'm being mindful of how many strokes are here. And it'll be especially important as I get to this side, to the shadowed side. Give just a little bit of highlight. Not much. All I'm really doing is adding more lines. I'm not putting a lot of pin pressure here. And I'm not, intentionally holding back my pin pressure. So I'm allowing my hand to sort of naturally to feel like this is sort of average pin pressure instead of holding way back, but I'm also not putting any extra. Just allowing the stylus to brush across the tablet. The upper part of the nostril should have some shadowing, but likewise underneath it's going to have some highlighting. There's a dip right in the middle somewhere. We'll say this is as good as any. So to do that, we'll fade out on one side and have light on the other. Right, you can see there's a burst of light along this line and it kind of fades into it. And then as we bring it over, we'll slowly taper this off, but bring it over just a little further first. And now we're going to finish out the ears. Now their ears will kind of fade into this abyss. So I'm just gonna, it's gonna have more highlight than it currently does. They have kind of big fluffy ears. Highlighting through here, not along the back, because with the light source in front, the back of the ear would be in shadow. So we're gonna have some highlighting over here. As we come to this edge, we're gonna fade that off. And then we're gonna fade it off as it comes back this way. There's gonna be some highlighting up in here before the ear really sort of rounds into the abyss of itself. And on this edge, we're going to fade the rest of that in. I'm going to leave some of it black as we bring it down, but we'll fade off the strokes. Really give it the sensation that it's sort of fading away into a bigger recess. The back side of this one is going to be in highlight as opposed to the back side of the other one being in shadow. It's just all edges are in shadow, so this edge is in shadow and this is going to be in shadow. This front side, but otherwise fade that off. Just like the other one, we're going to fade this into the ear. We're going to hopefully have this a little more backed off than the other side. This is the shadowed side, so we don't want it to be as, we want it to have less highlight in effect. Since I'm doing this without looking at the other, I may not do it right. We'll see. Be easy enough to fix. Their eyes, like a lot of animals, you know, their eyes tend to be brown. So we're just going to choose a nice little brown here. And then after we do the eyes, we'll do the whiskers, which will be, whiskers are nice and easy, but it's a nice little thing to add. All right, for the eyes, we're going to start by fleshing out the pupil on both sides. Make sure it looks like it's looking at us. It doesn't have to be perfect, although I do try as much as possible, because once we surround it all in, I'll be taking the select tool to erase away any imperfect lines. And then we'll just fill it in. So as I come off of the pupil, I'm going to try and follow the contour of the top of the eye here, right? So the top section I usually do in black to indicate shadow. So it needs to kind of match this line. You don't want it to be, like I don't want the line coming up this way, because that'll make it look, you know, not quite right. So we'll usually have it angled, you know, more down. And if I need it higher, I follow the pupil up higher before I angle it down. Same thing on this side. And then angle it down. And then just fill it in. And once we get this sorted, we'll do the shadows and highlights. Right. So now we're just gonna make sure the pupil's nice and straight. Same thing on this side. Just fixing the edge of the eye. For some reason this isn't looking right, and before I fill in the whole eye, I just want to make sure I have this edge right. I think that looks better. Right, highlight for the eye, side of the light source going all the way underneath with a burst of light against the opposite side with the pupil, and then against the pupil on this side will go into shadow, and then it'll start to fade into shadow over here. And then of course on the edge should also be in shadow. Same thing on this side, the burst against the pupil, and then the highlight on the side of the light source going underneath, fading out to shadow on the edge. Just going to extend this a little higher. Something still doesn't quite look right. If I need to, I can bring this all the way around. Not convinced I really need to yet. But as long as it looks off to me, it'll look off to others. So even if it requires a little bit more work than I was planning on, you know, if you're drawing something and something doesn't look right, it won't look right to others as well. So usually it's a quick fix or something that you can do. You know, sometimes it's a minor change you need to make and it'll work perfectly. So I'm just going to fade it up. Just kind of like what we did with the ears, you know, where I'm just fading the lines up, indicating that it's kind of going into a shadow. And if that's not enough, I'll just go ahead and bring the lines all the way around. Oh yeah, I think that did a lot for that one. So let's go ahead and do that for over here. Some of what's going to make that work is I have to follow the pupil a little bit further around. And then these are all just faded strokes. Yeah, okay, I do think that works. So I'm just going to take the white and we're going to create the light flare. I'm going to do that by selecting the elliptical marquee tool and then creating a circle or an oval, typically in where the light is hitting on the eye. So I don't want it up in a shadowed section, and I want it on the side of the light source. And then we're just going to fill it. Foreground color. And same thing on this side. Roughly matching what we did on the other. Now, for the whiskers. So whiskers, quick, long strokes. I'm going to move my arm at the shoulder, and I'm just going to kind of make a swipe. Swipe. Now the hair's kind of thick, so we may also mess up the hair too. Wherever you put one whisker, you want to put a jumble of several. Whatever you do on one side, you want to do on the other. So we're going to bring this down. Typically whiskers are shorter as they come straight down. And it's light pin pressure, so I'm not putting a lot of pressure for this. Then whatever I do on one side, I need to do on the other. Again, moving my arm at the shoulder. And then bringing it down. Now I'm going to mess up his hair a bit. It's long hair. So to do that, light pin pressure just like the whiskers, and just up and down strokes on the edge of the hair. And of course, in the color that's appropriate, so I'll do a brown when it gets to the brown. Gives it a fluffier kind of look. I'm going to do the same to the ears because their ears are pretty fluffy as well. Alright, so that is how you draw a raccoon. I hope that was helpful. In the floating nether next to me, I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.